Today we are going to start a new chapter, chapter 8. It involves measuring. Lesson 1 is about measuring lengths in millimeters. So with this lesson we will be using a ruler in order to measure in millimeters and then convert to centimeters and vice versa. So going from centimeters back to millimeters. All right, so we got this ruler. It goes from 0 to 30. That means it's 30 centimeters long. How many millimeters long is that? Okay, so just looking at the ruler right here, we're just gonna look at the first centimeter. So from 0 to 1. If we count the number of dashes that we got from 0 to 1, we're going to find out how many centimeters or how many millimeters is there in 1 centimeters. So we'll do that. We got the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That longer one is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we counted from the number 0 centimeter to 1 centimeter, and we got 10 smaller dashes. That means 10 millimeters is equal to 1 centimeters. So we'll write that down. 10 millimeters equals 1 centimeter. So if I ask you how many millimeters is there in 2 centimeters? So 2 centimeters equal how many millimeters? Okay, so we'll go back to the first equation that we found out, and we found out that 10 millimeters equals 1 centimeters. So we're going to have to figure out, so when we go from 10 to 1, that means the number is getting smaller. That means we will be dividing. So when we go from 10 to 1, we would divide by 10. So when we go from millimeters to centimeters, we are dividing by 10. And if we go the other way around, if we go from centimeters to millimeters, we notice from centimeters to millimeters, the number is getting bigger. So we're multiplying by 10. So we multiply by 10. So from centimeters to millimeters, we know that we must multiply by 10. So 2 times 10 equals 20. 2 centimeters times 10 equals 20 millimeters. All right, so we'll give another example. We'll go with 6 centimeters. 6 centimeters is equal how many millimeters? So to go from centimeters to millimeters, we must multiply by 10. 6 centimeters times 10 equals 60 millimeters. So we have 60 millimeters and 6 centimeters. Moving on, I would like to draw a little line, and I would like to measure. So it's just going to be a random line that I'd be drawing. Okay, I just use that. And I would like to measure this line. So of course, when you start with the measuring, we do not start from 1. That's a common mistake that students make, is that they would start measuring from the number 1. But we are actually going to start measuring from 0, because that's the proper way. So we will place the 0. I'm gonna go backwards with this because it's easier for me to do so. We're gonna start right at 0. That's at the end of the line right there. That's the end of the line. So we start right at 0, and we're going to go all the way until this right here. It ended up being exactly 10. 10 what? That's 10 centimeters. So now if I tell you I wanted this measurement in millimeters, what do? So again, we look back at the formula up here. So to go from centimeters to millimeters, we must multiply by 10. So to change this from centimeters to millimeters, we must multiply by 10. So I have 10 centimeters. I multiply that by 10. It is equal to 100 millimeters. All right. I'd like to measure a paper clip. I have a paper clip over here because that's a question that I could ask you, is measure a paper clip using your ruler. Again, you're gonna get your ruler, and let's not forget, we must always start at 0. So we're going to start at 0. We're going to place at one end of the paper clip, which is right there, and we're going to measure it all the way until we get to the end of this paper clip. So again, we started at about right there, and we're moving all the way about there. If we place the ruler from the first point to the end point over here, it's about 5 centimeters long. Again, 5 centimeters equal to how many millimeters? We go back to the formula. We find out that to go from centimeters to millimeters, we must multiply by 10. 5 centimeters times 10 equals 50 millimeters. I could give several examples now, because that's another question that I could ask you, is convert from millimeters to centimeters and the other way around. So example right here, I will say convert. The question is convert 25 millimeters to centimeters. That's one. And another example, I could do 62 centimeters to millimeters. Okay, so to go from millimeters to centimeters, we know the number is going to get smaller. The number is going to get smaller. We know we must divide by 10. 62 centimeters to millimeters, we know that the number is going to get bigger, so we're going to multiply by 10. So to work with the first question right here, 25 divided by 10 equals 2.5. So 25 divided by 10 equals 2.5. So 25 millimeters equals 2.5 centimeters. 62 centimeters to get to millimeters, we know the number gets bigger, so we're going to multiply by 10. So 62 times 10, again, we go back to unit 6 where we did multiplication. 62, you could do this without a calculator, of course. 62 times 1 equals 62, and then we bring down the 0. Again, we're not adding the 0, we're bringing down the 0. And that's pretty much it for lesson number 1, measuring lengths in millimeters. And what I want you to take from here is to always remember, when we go from millimeters to centimeters, the number is getting smaller, so we must divide by 10. When we're going from centimeters to millimeters, the number is getting bigger, so we must multiply by 10. And again, there could be different type of questions that I could ask you. I could ask you to draw a line for me in millimeters or in centimeters. I could draw a line for you and tell you to measure it for me. I could get you questions in which I would tell you to convert from millimeters to centimeters and the other way around. And I could actually bring you a question and say, measure a paper clip. And then using that measurement of the paper clip, I'd like you to measure the length of the paper. So you would place the paper down, you already know what the measurement of the paper clip is, and you would start measuring. So we know we measured it earlier, it was at 5 centimeters or 50 millimeters. So we say that's about 1, that's about 2, that's about 3, and we go all the way to the end. And let's say we came about around 5 paper clips. We'll say the length of this paper is about 5 paper clips long. We say 5 paper clips long because we used a paper clip to measure, and of course it's not going to be an accurate measurement, so it'll be an estimate.